Good morning, everyone. As you can tell, as we struggle to get our quorum, it's very difficult to compete with baby goats outside. However, in our efforts to do the people's business, we will power on regardless. Today is the March 19th edition of the Full House Commerce Committee. I'm Kevin Vaughn. I'll be your host for the rest of this time together. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Representatives Alexander, Barrett, Boyd, Burkhart, Camper, Clemens, Faison, Freeman, Garrett, Hale, Hardaway, Haston, Hazelwood, Holsclaw, Johnson, Lynn, Marsh, Moon, Powers, Sparks, Thompson, Towns, Vital, Williams, Zachary, Vice Chairman Bricken, Chairman Vaughn. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. As we find ourselves in the waning days of subcommittees, we have members that will be coming and going as they have to present their legislation. And as I also did point out, there is a herd of baby goats outside our Cordell Hall building today, which does make things difficult to keep folks inside the building. And that probably the person who has the biggest impact on that is Chairman Rusty Grills. So today I'm going to be, well, I'll tell you what, before I deal with that, we have a little bit of housekeeping to do. House Bill 2479 has been rolled 1 week. House Bill 2440, I was going to do them all together. I'm going to do them in one slew for efficiency's sake. House Bill 2440 is rolled 1 week. House Bill 2712 is rolled to the heel of the calendar, and my fabulous House Bill 2309 has off notice. So for all of those items, that's what we're doing with those. All right. So in order to accommodate today's Ag Day host, we're going to recognize Chairman Grills first off so that he can get about his duties. That's House Bill 2762. We have a motion and a second. Chairman Grills, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. If you would look, I believe we have an amendment that we need to put on this bill, and the amendment actually makes the bill. I have 15729.
That is what we have. And so we got a motion and a second on that amendment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, no. The amendment is attached. Let's talk about it, Chairman Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so the amendment come from negotiations between the bankers and the financial institutions and the gun groups. Over the past 3 or 4 weeks, we've been going back and forth trying to come up to an agreement, and they've come to the agreement on this. So they both have signed off. So that's how we got to this point. But the reason we need this bill, in 2022, the financial institutions introduced unique merchant category codes specifically for the transaction of firearm stores. These newly established merchant codes have raised concerns as financial institutions have publicly declared that they enable the identification of purchases as potentially high-risk transactions, granting them the authority to file suspicious activity reports with the Treasury Department Financial Crimes Network. It is important to note that this unique merchant code is applied to any purchase at a firearm store, regardless of whether the transaction involves a firearm or not. Adoption of these MCCs will subject law-abiding citizens who purchase an item at a firearm store to search warrants, questioning based on ill-found and baseless suspicious activity reports. Therefore, this legislation, as introduced, is to limit the capacity of the financial institutions to engage in unauthorized surveillance of consumers engaging in lawful transactions at firearm store. This legislation bans financial institutions from acquiring or discriminating against firearm stores that do not participate in the usage of the unique merchant codes that are different from general purchase merchant codes or sporting good merchant codes. And a violation of this act will constitute an investigation by the Attorney General and a civil penalty of up to $10,000 per violation. There was in the original bill, there was a private right of action, but that part has been removed. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll do my best to answer any question.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. And let me say thank you for two things. Number one, thanks for working the kinks out on this bill through this amendment. I know that I feel much better about it. But the other thing that I want to thank you for is the legislation itself. It's kind of interesting. I was having lunch with a gentleman earlier, right before we came into session. And he's actually the chairman of the board of a community bank. And he was very disconcerted about some of the data that Chairman Yellen had called up before testimony in front of Congress with regards to some of these purchases and the tracking of them. And even he said, hey, y'all need to do something about this.
Sure.
And so as a result, Chairman Grills, you worked with the stakeholders to get this in the best posture possible. I know that it took quite a while to do that. We had many conversations about it. And so I appreciate you staying with it, and I appreciate you bringing it. We have anybody that needs to be recognized on this? Have we got, hold on. Representative Freeman, you're first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and sponsor. Thanks for Ag Day today. Good work. I've got a couple of questions though. I just want to make sure I'm understanding what we're voting on. So a merchant category code, how many merchant category codes are there? I mean, are we tracking appliances and all those different things?
Chairman Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This does not deal with any other merchant codes except the firearm category codes that were issued. It was in 2022 when the ISO in Switzerland come up with these codes that they wanted to implement and essentially require financial institutions to start using those for firearm purchases in firearm stores. If you go back to 2022, I believe it was September of 2022, General Scarametti sent a letter with 18 other AGs concerned about this very act. So there's a very good paper trail of concerns across the country.
Representative Freeman.
So we're deleting this category code. So what would the purchase be categorized under? Would it just be blank? And if that's blank, would that not be an easy way to track as well?
Chairman Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We would just stick with the general purchase merchant codes or sporting good merchant codes as they use now.
Okay, thanks.
Representative Clements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just shocked that this sponsor didn't point out that on that big state seal behind our chairman's large head back there, that agriculture is written above commerce on the state seal for a reason. So you missed that opportunity. Second of all,
I'm awake now.
second of all, I know that these folks have been recommending these merchant category codes, but is any bank or anybody actually using these yet, even though they've been recommended?
Chairman Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe, right off the top of my head, I can't think of the name of the bank, but I do know in California they have implemented these types of codes. Last December, 48 senators signed on to and sent a letter to a certain bank or credit card company and asking them to hurry up and implement them. So I guess that would be, there is definitely a push in that direction.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, my follow-up question
Yes,
is,
Chairman Clements.
thank you.
And you're
sir.
very short rope this morning, and as well as your tissue box.
Somebody get that boy a pork loin biscuit.
Oh, don't do that right now. You vote yes, we'll go.
My don't throw it too hard. Hey, so my second question, in all seriousness, is this going to hinder criminal investigations anyway? Do they rely on these codes, or are they planning to rely on these codes to track sales or anything like that?
Chairman Grills.
I don't know how it would, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't see why it would hinder any criminal investigation.
Okay, thank you.
Leader Camper, did I see your hand?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You did. Thank you, Representative Grills, for, if I'm correct in your opening statement, you say you work with stakeholders, financial institutions to get to a point where everyone can agree on this legislation. Is that right? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, you did. Yes.
Thank you, because, as it was traveling earlier, it was a lot of concerns that, maybe we didn't feel, was really getting addressed. So the fact that you took the time to do that and meet with everybody before we got to this point, I really appreciate that. The other question I had was around whether or not we've been experiencing this in the state of Tennessee. I think you just answered that with the previous question from Chairman Clemens. Is that correct?
Chairman Grills?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not think we are experiencing that in Tennessee currently.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Grills.
All right, we're gonna. Chairman Powers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for Ag Day again, Chairman Grills. Wanted to check with you on one thing. You mentioned, I think, an amendment on the private right of action. Thank you. First of all, thank you for going through the House Banking Committee and working with the Tennessee Banking Association to get this to where it's really a good bill. And the private right of action, that has been taken out on the amendment. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. So it'll just go to the Attorney General's office if there's any kind of. right.
That's correct. And
Chairman Grills?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. And
I'm
that
sorry.
is correct. And if the Attorney General does not investigate it, then that store can go and petition the Chancery Court to get an injunction at that point.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All righty, thank you. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Chairman. And I want you to know I'm resisting the urge to follow up with Chairman Clemens. It's hard, but I'm resisting, sir. Good morning.
Morning.
On what was the purpose or intention of the financial institutions in having these categories?
Chairman Grills?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the beginning of the bill, you'll see the reason laid out in the whereas clauses. I think it's on the first sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, actually before section 1. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it'll lay out exactly why this bill is so important. I'm not going to take the time to read that here so I don't bore everyone, but it lays out in pretty good detail exactly why. And then that letter that was sent from the ISO back in 2022.
Representative Hardaway?
I'm sorry, iOS.
Representative Hardaway, you got a follow-up?
Yes, sir. What was the original intention or purpose of these institutions in having these categories?
Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I cannot tell you what their original intention was. There is a fear that these codes could be used to harass law-abiding citizens who purchase items legally. That is what the fear is.
Representative Hardaway?
Thank you. And the only consequences are civil action, not criminal action, if the financial institutions violate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sponsor?
The Attorney General will be petitioned. The Attorney General will investigate, and what the Attorney General finds in that manner will be able to, I believe it's a levy, a fine, a civil penalty of $10,000 per offense. I believe that's the way that works. So I do not believe that there's a criminal action in it. I believe it's strictly civil.
And that's one of the things that we had asked Chairman Grills to go back and look at with regards to whether or not this did contain a private right of action. And so he worked with the AG and with all the stakeholders on it and got it to this point to where if the AG and consumer protection folks can't hammer it out, then what happens is that they could go to Chancery Court and get an injunction against the store that's creating the issues. So that's kind of the resolution that was garnered from Chairman Grills' extra work on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the sponsor.
Mr. Sponsor, you got something you need?
Yes, sir. I just want to thank Representative Burkhart. There's been 3 or 4 other guys that have filed similar bills, but we've kind of all coalesced around this one. So Representative Burkhart, Representative Stevens, I believe Representative Barrett had one. There's been several of us, and just so happens that I'm the one that gets to carry the bill. So thank you all for that. And they've worked just as hard on it as I have. So I want to commend them as well.
Actually, I appreciate that very much. I think in the early weeks, we said, hey, let's just deal with one of these and you guys get it together. And I appreciate y'all doing that and cooperating with each other to get it hammered out. Speaker Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Grills, you've done an excellent job on this bill and excellent job on Ag Day. The biscuits were great. And I know why you've done such an excellent job today, because you've got two women out here in the audience that are watching you. I believe one's your two ladies in your life,
That's right.
your mom and your daughter.
That's right.
Welcome.
Chairman, you mind introducing them for us?
Oh, no. Hey, that's my mom there. Ann, her name is Ann. If you want to stand up.
Mrs. Grills.
And then stood up there at the end. That's Curly Sue. That's Hadley. She's 13.
Well, it's great to have y'all with us today. Representative Sparks, you had a hand up.
I just want to tell you, thank you. My seatmate here made a comment. I don't know if he'd be willing to share what you said.
Representative Freeman.
I would not.
He said,
Back
we're
to
not,
you,
we're not
Representative Sparks.
California. Thank you.
Chairman Clemens, can't wait to see what you have to offer.
Good tidings. So I just wanted to point out that those delicious biscuits out there from Cracker Barrel, and as Representative Garrett will agree with me on, great things come out of Lebanon, Tennessee, which is where Cracker Barrel started.
We're great.
I'm going to tell your wife on you. And then the other thing, I just want to get on the record, who's going to be throwing the hay bales today?
Chairman Grills.
I suggest you show up at 9:45 to see it for yourself.
All right, I don't see any more hands up with regards to the bill. I think everybody's got it. Oh, Speaker Johnson, we're kind of in an Ag Day frame of mind, but Speaker Johnson, you have something to contribute, sir?
Thank you.
All those in favor of sending House Bill, let's see, House Bill 2762 on to calendar and rules as amended, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, no. Hearing none, hearing a lot more ayes, you're
Thank
off
you.
to calendar and rules. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you, sir.
Sponsor. Representative Alexander, you're recognized.
Anyway, I just felt the air conditioning could cut on, and I just wondered if we were killing hogs in here.
Well, I don't know, the old chairman's a big-headed, sweaty fella, so he appreciates a little factory air every now and then. All right, we're going to get back to our regular schedule, and I postponed the administration's bill last week, so I usually like to do my bills at the end, but we're going to make sure that we have time for this bill. So I'm going to be passing the gavel on to Vice Chairman Brickens for House Bill 1892.
I think we have a motion and a second. Any amendments on this bill?
Yes, sir. There are
Three amendments.
several amendments on this bill. It's 13987,
All right.
14988.
We
Oh, okay, yeah, we might,
Okay.
let's deal with
Can we-
all of them. Yeah, my
do
bad.
all at once?
I was on a roll, excuse
All
me.
right. All in favor of putting amendment 13987 on the bill, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's on the bill. Next amendment.
House Bill 14988.
All in favor of putting amendment 14988 on the bill, say aye. Any opposed? It's on the bill.
And the final is amendment number 15587.
All right, all in favor of putting amendment 15587 on the bill, say aye. Any opposed? It's on the bill. Without objection, let's roll all amendments into one. All right.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is the administration's third-party inspector bill as well as third-party plans review bill. It provides a path if a jurisdiction is having trouble getting to plans to be reviewed or is providing inspections. This comes on the heels of last year's third-party electrical engineering or electrical service and inspections here in Davidson County. It was a big problem. We passed that bill. That big problem resolved itself. And so as the governor looked into what to do in other jurisdictions, this was the result. It provides for people to contact approved, registered engineers and architects to provide this work. There will be a list and requirements put forth through the fire marshal's office. When we first started this, it's interesting because I had a conversation with one of my jurisdictions, and the immediate reaction was almost a reflexive negative. But as one night, as we sat and talked about it around the table, they began to realize and admitted that in the past they had hired third-party plans reviewers themselves, that whenever they had turnover issues within their inspector ranks, they also had employed third-party people to fill in for them. So it's not necessarily a question of qualified individuals inside the marketplace to do this work. And I kind of like it because from a positive perspective for some of our jurisdictions and municipalities, if they're working if they're through a period, sometimes work comes and goes. Maybe a couple of large projects land within a jurisdiction that may have a relatively small codes review department. This keeps them from having to hire someone else. This allows them to tell private developers, hey, we can get to this in 6 weeks, or if you want to, you can go through the state's mandated process by which you have private plans reviewers do this, and it'll allow them to be able to handle surges in their business without necessarily the needless addition of more personnel that runs up costs for all the taxpayers. And so I think that this bill has been properly vetted. Again, as I said during subcommittee, I don't think that this is necessarily in the final form that had I written the bill, it would be in, but I do appreciate the effort, and I do appreciate the fact that this is a starting point for consideration of this effort. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will try to answer any questions I can with regards to the process and the bill.
Thank you. We have Representative Friedman.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to, again, commend the sponsor for copying a great idea that the city of Nashville put forth a couple of years ago. But I also want to address a couple of comments that I've heard from people that are opposed to the bill, and I think misguidedly so. The idea that it somehow is going to make our inspections less safe, I think is absolutely untrue. This process is used in other industry right now. We have an inspection department that is completely overburdened with too many projects in front of them, and they can't give it the time that I think it deserves. And so allowing a third party to come in and do these inspections, I think will not only streamline the process, but allow them to spend more time to go through and find potential violations or problems with the process. And also, I believe it'll have a reduction in cost to the construction industry at large. Time is money. And when you have carry cost of a loan plus a piece of property, and you're not receiving either the being able to close on the sale and or lease payments, these people are carrying these loans for an additional 2, 3, 4 months, waiting on cities to come do inspection. So I commend the sponsor for this, and I look forward to voting for this favorably.
Thank you. Any response to that, Chairman?
No, sir. Thank you.
Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And a question for the sponsor that was brought to me by one of my municipalities, and I apologize for not getting to you earlier on this. But their only concern was if a third-party inspector performed the inspection, then down the road there was a problem. The inspection had proven to be, incorrect, not good, whatever. Where does the liability fall? Is that going to be back on the municipality, or would that go with the third-party inspector? How would that work?
Thanks, Chairman Hazelwood. There's nothing in this bill that absolves inspectors and reviewers of liability. There's no indemnification portion to this bill. So if there is neglect or an error or omission, then I would think that they would pursue remedy however the city felt they should.
Any
Right, so-
follow-up?
Yes, sir. Just to be clear, again, for my municipal government that reached out to me. So what we're saying with this legislation is if this third party performs the service, then that third party would be the responsible party downstream for any civil actions. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yes, ma'am. That's the way I understand it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Vital?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick follow-up on Representative Hazelwood's question. If a third party did sign off and there was potential liability, even though the CO was granted by the city, would the city be held liable for issuing the CO?
I am not a court of proper jurisdiction to determine that. I think each case would be fact-driven upon itself. Representative Vital?
Okay, I'm just trying to understand the line of responsibility. I do know that many cities hire third parties to do these inspections, and that's given me a lot more comfort in this decision. I just want to make sure that taxpayers ultimately are not caught in the middle here with approval processes when it was done by a third party.
Again, this bill does not speak to indemnifying any of the providers of this service.
Thank you. I just know that many years ago in the city of Chattanooga, we had a very large waterfront project that used private inspectors. And ultimately, it came down to multiple millions of dollars of issues that created taxpayer exposure. So I have real reservations in that respect. So, but thank you for working forward on this bill. But I do have concerns.
Any follow-up to that, Chairman?
No, sir.
All right, Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Chairman Vaughn, administration for this bill. As somebody who pulls a lot of permits across the state for construction services, I think as Representative Freeman said earlier, the biggest benefit to this is that we're going to be able to deploy capital faster on construction projects. People will be able to get certificates of occupancy quicker. These are licensed professionals who are certified to do this work. They stamp and seal these drawings to make sure that they meet state and local codes. So there's multiple avenues of oversight for it. And I think the best thing for someone like me, if I go to one community, I know that it's going to take me 12 weeks to get a building permit because of the backlog in that community. Whereas I can go into my own community and it's about 2 weeks. And so, but you can come to my community sometimes because we may have a large industrial project and we only have 2 people doing review and inspections. It could take 12 weeks to do it there as well. What this would do, it would allow, as the chairman said earlier, to be able to manage the ebbs and flows of each local community better for those people who are looking to build projects. So I thank you for the bill. I think it's going to make a huge impact across our state.
Thank you. All right, Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was actually looking at you when I turned around. I wasn't trying to see if I could see the seal back there. And Chairman, I'm still resisting. Following up on Chairlady Hazelwood's line of questioning on the liability issues and how to indemnify the parties, is there any additional insurance or bonding requirements?
Chairman?
No, there is not.
Okay. Just a couple of other questions. Will the government dictate fees or in any way impact the fees, the max or minimum that the private parties can charge?
Chairman?
No, there is not. There's not a cap on the fees. But those expenses are borne by the developer, and each developer will have the opportunity to determine whether or not it's a cost value ratio that they're willing to accept.
All right. Thank you. So it's a free market, not the government. Can there be a combination of parties inspecting on one project? Or are you locked in if you start with the private entities or if you start with the government entities?
Chairman?
Thank you. That's a good question. The bill, there's not an opportunity to jump in and out. And the reason you can start over, you can abandon and start over, but the issue then becomes one of the jurisdiction, because I don't know if somebody, let's say that you have an electrical project that somebody does your rough in, and then you want to go, you can go private after regular, but I doubt jurisdictions would want to go pick up after the private. They want the private to carry it on through. But if you wind up getting jammed up in your process, let's say that it's taking you, your first inspection comes off 3 days and you didn't really like it, but you felt okay about it. And then they tell you it's going to be 2 weeks before your next electrical inspection. Then you may be able to tell them, hey, we're going private. But then you can't continue to jump back and forth. You need to either, if you're going to get off the bus and take your car, you need to stay in your car. You don't need to get back on the bus.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. And I'm not going to turn around and look at that seal.
By the way, I invite everyone to turn around and just soak in the gorgeousness. Whether or not it's the seal or your chairman, does not matter to me. Just drink it all in. I'm welcome and able to the task.
I'm not sure about that. All right. Leader Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to touch on what Chairman Hazelwood mentioned about liability insurance. If one of these third-party inspectors is inspecting a job of $10 million and they only have $5 million, $3 million in liability insurance and something goes wrong, what is the remedy?
Chairman?
Well, in that case, Representative, let's just say that you have an issue with a building like that to begin with. Everybody is going to be named. That's kind of the understanding within our business, is that everybody's going to be named. And the fault on that of whether or not an electrical inspector picks out faulty work or whether it's faulty design, that's all got to be figured out along the way. But that is an issue that would have to be, again, adjudicated by the court system. But I can't recall many, and some of my fellow members that serve in the industry, rare do I recall a city being in a tragedy of some type of building failure that the city's blamed for faulty inspections, because the contractor is responsible for his means and methods along the way. And so I don't know how to properly answer that question, but it's not one that gives me grave concern at this point in time.
And Mr. Chairman, one question that was posed to me was if you have a bad actor, and let's say they're inspecting a building that has a $3 million sprinkler system, and they pay the bad actor inspector $200 just to sign off on it, what would be the remedy there?
Chairman?
I would assume there'd be criminal proceedings against both individuals who decided to shirk their responsibilities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next up, Representative Lynn.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I was wondering, is there ethics in the bill where we know it'll be a third party? And I love the bill. I think it'll help a lot. But we know there will be a third party doing the inspections, but that's a third party to the government. Is it also a third party to the project? In other words, an engineer. There's an engineer, there's the client. They cannot inspect their own project because that certainly would be an ethical issue. And then process-wise, similar to appraisers, will there be a rotating list to work off of rather than, the same one all the time. And I understand in some areas there may not be enough engineers to have a rotating list, but in some areas there will be.
Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regards to it speaks in the bill with regards to the fire marshal not appointing someone who has a conflict of interest in the project. And they won't accept their report or their plans review. With regards to the rotating list, I think that'd be jurisdictionally dependent, because there may be 4 of these folks domiciled in eastern Shelby County, but there may be 1 in Putnam County. I think that's going to be dependent upon the amount of people that sign up and get registered with the fire marshal to provide these services.
Anything else, Representative? If not, Leader Camper?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have a question about the section that deals with aquatic resource alternate permitting. Are we authorizing also a third-party wetlands professional to do the same thing?
Chairman, did you hear the question okay?
Well, I heard it okay. I've got PTSD when it comes to wetlands
I
right now.
know you do, Mr. Chairman.
You'll have to excuse
I
me.
thought it was going to rattle right off for you.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. There's a process for not only wetlands, but also for septic tanks as well.
Leader Camper?
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your answer. Amendment 2 that we put on talks about soil scientists. Can you elaborate a little bit on what we're doing there?
Chairman?
Yes, ma'am. Basically, we placed inside the bill the common practice that occurs today. And that is that soil scientists can approve septic tank sizing with regards to flows of 750 gallons a day or less, which is a fairly good size residential home. This bill does not provide soil scientists with equal footing with engineers when it comes to packaged plant treatment or packaged treatment plants and other items. Their skill set's a bit different than that. In soil science, this is not a slight toward soil scientists at all. They just do something different. And this bill acknowledges their continued role in residential septic tank sizing and placement, as well as the allocation of how many field lines and things such as that. But that's the limitation with this bill. It basically limits it to current day practice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Leader Camper?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious about that subsection.
All right, next up, Representative Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the bill. This is a great bill. One of the previous speakers was worried about third-party inspections. We have municipalities who make bad inspections too. So this is not a one-way street. And we've had city buildings who had municipal inspections and they failed. So this is not, just because you have a third party doesn't mean you're guaranteed, or just because you have municipality inspecting doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. So I appreciate the bill and thank you very much. That's it.
Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call the previous question on this wonderful bill.
We have a call for the question. Any objections? If not, let's vote on House Bill 1892 as amended. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Here, if you want to be registered as no, let the clerk know. The ayes have it. And it goes to calendar rules as amended.
Thank you, committee. Next up is House Bill 2300 by Chairman Howell. I see him back there. Motion second. Chairman Howell, I believe you have an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I almost went to sleep back there listening to the wonderful news about your bill. Let's see. I believe what I have is 14186. Does that match your record, sir?
I guess so, you know. Yeah. I used to tune into your committee till I fell asleep a few times. Transportation, whoo, boy.
That's easy.
That's
to
some
do.
hot topics.
That's easy.
All
to
right,
do.
Chairman Howell. Why don't you share with us about this dynamic, exciting bill, though?
This is a good one, sir. This is a good one. This bill seeks to create a consistent standard of repair across the state of Tennessee for the restoration of pavement when a cut is made to install a home to a natural gas utility line. This is necessary because the investor-owned gas utilities are overseen by the Tennessee Public Utility Commission. And so it's a state oversight. An example would be when a gas utility makes a normal 5 by 5 foot cut in the pavement to connect a house. The city ordinances, sometimes there's a patchwork of city ordinances. Sometimes the utility is required to patch that 5 by 5 foot cut at like 200% repair, which is pretty standard, which would be instead of 25 square feet, it'd be 50. I know I'm trying to amaze you with my math skills here, Chairman. Other municipalities require utility to go as high as making them pave the entire street. There's more than one municipality that requires that in the state of Tennessee. It's unnecessary. It's a burden on the ratepayers for the gas utility. And what we have is in some cases where the gas ratepayers are actually paying to pave the streets in some of these cities. So what this bill seeks to do is create a statewide standard of 200% repair in that disturbed area. And that's all the bill does, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know that in subcommittee, I had talked about making this more comprehensive, but whenever we looked at the issue, this section of code we're talking about deals with investor-owned natural gas utilities. And if we were to make this more of a street cut situation, we would be dealing with a wide host of folks that that we need to include in that. And it got really complicated really quickly. I think this would be a great place to start. Let's take a look and see how this goes, because there are limited number of investor-owned utilities throughout the state providing services within our cities, not just beyond transmission, but actually serving customers. So this will be a good chance to see that. After I had a great idea, and then after I examined the great idea, or perhaps more correctly, it was examined for me, I learned that it probably wasn't the greatest thing since sliced bread. And it was something that I did not want to bite off in a session this time in it, but it is something that we will be keeping our eyes on
Thank you,
as we move forward. So I just wanted to speak to what I had mentioned in the subcommittee on that. Chairman Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did we put the amendment on the bill that rewrites the bill, sir?
No, sir, we did not.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. I think you did answer my question, but this is because the way the bill is drafted, you couldn't include any additional utilities, even if they were privately held.
We would have had to, I believe that to be the case, but we would have had to have opened up a lot more with it, and it just got to be out of hand, because then it becomes a question of where do you stop? Muni electrics, muni water, whether or not it's utility districts, all of those different entities would have had a stake in something that's a little bit different about them. And so what we wanted to do here was, let's stick to the topic at hand for now. And if we want to do a comprehensive street cut policy or bill that would handle policy from across the state, then that's going to be a lot wider area that we have, area of code we've got to address.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. I just think that it's also a good practice if public utilities were maybe held to the same standards. I don't know, but I look forward to talking to you about that later.
Chairman, Representative Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sponsor, for bringing this bill. I do know that in my area and the surrounding counties where we have utility companies that operate in both with various requirements for paving and repair, this uniformly will help them plan better and do a better quality of work. So I appreciate it and I support it greatly. Thank you.
Representative Hardaway. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Chairman. You kind of touched on it. I want to make sure this doesn't impact MLGW back in Memphis, Shelby County.
No, sir, it does not, but that next one will.
Mr. Chairman, I've held off on those head jokes, but I'm coming that way. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And let's do this. Let's get this amendment on here and then let's vote. Got a question on the amendment. All those in favor of attaching amendment 14186 to 2300?
Hey.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? No. The amendment's attached. Any further discussion on the bill? I see that my bill sponsor down here. First, I've just got to say one thing. My fellow committee members off to my right learned how to whisper in a sawmill. Their volume control is not very good. Chairman Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must say I need to bring more bills to this committee. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. But let me just briefly address, this bill is narrowly written. It only addresses the gas companies which are overseen by the state of Tennessee. Municipality-owned utilities, they have their own governing board. They may have an authority. Co-op electric companies, for example, or believe it or not, are overseen by TVA. So we didn't want to get into those weeds, and I appreciate the chairman for doing that.
That's why that's a bigger bill for a later day. Chairman Hazelwood.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to comment that I didn't want you to feel rained on or disrespected in any way. That same group or very similar to that same group, I have the same issue with them in my finance committee. So it is a common problem.
Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. As you know, I meant no disrespect. I just don't have the ability to serve on the subcommittee. So I was merely asking the subcommittee chairman about the bill, but I apologize for speaking in my outdoor voice.
Let's vote this thing on out of here.
Please.
Chairman Howell will be petitioning to join our committee next year if we don't look out.
Right.
All those in favor of House Bill 2300, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, noes? The ayes have it. 2300 is off to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee.
We've taken Speaker Johnson. Next is House Bill 1859 by Representative Davis. Speaker Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have spoke with Representative Davis, and without objection, I'd like to roll this bill 1 week.
All right, without any objection, we're going to roll House Bill 1859 1 week. House Bill 1731 is next up with Representative McAlmon. We got a motion and a second. We have a lot of amendments. Let's see, we've got amendment. Give us your amendment codes there, Representative McAlmon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I should have amendment drafting code 015542 as well as 015993.
That's what we're showing. Let's get those attached so your chairman does not forget about them. All those in favor of attaching 15542, please. Wait, we need we got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, no. That one's on there. How about 15993? Got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, no. Golly, I'm getting quick on the gavel. That is also attached, sir. You're in proper posture. Please talk to us about booting and towing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And might I add, that is a beautiful state seal, and it contrasts well with your jacket this morning, sir. So members, we're calling this the Motion Act, motion standing for Modernization of Towing, Immobilization, and Oversight Normalization. So essentially what it does is it is going to consolidate all towing code into one chapter. It's going to break it down into towing and booting. With regards to booting a vehicle, we've had some more than just a few bad apples in this sector. So we're essentially making it, we're prohibiting booting except on commercial parking lots with employees there representing the owner of that commercial lot, being the only ones able to put the boots on those vehicles. This stemmed out of a couple instances, one out of Memphis and one out of here in Nashville. There was a gentleman who went out, was having dinner with his wife and came out. His parking was expired by about 10 minutes. Pays his parking, goes back in, no harm, no foul. Next week, he's back, same restaurant, same parking lot, comes out, gets ready to go, still had time on the clock, and there was a boot on his vehicle when he called the company. So, that's because we didn't get you last week. So, this is going to fix up some, true story. So, this is going to make it to where you can't be having these bad actors going around and just booting people arbitrarily just to run what's effectively a racket. It does not prohibit, within the 15993 had some language. We cleaned it up a little bit to clarify that vehicles that are going to be towed, if it is on a person's residential private property, that they are not prohibited from towing it off their property, as well as it does create a database for lien holders and trucking companies, anybody, towing companies and local law enforcement agencies, to have a portal to track any vehicle that has been towed and or booted. It does create a provision with booting that if you do put a boot on someone's vehicle, you have to be there within 45 minutes to take it off. You have to take credit card, and if you don't, you have to physically invoice them, similar to what we did last year with the Booting Protection Act. And with that, I stand ready for questions.
All right, thank you. I was just following up with legal to talk about what the remedy for some of these bad actors, what a consumer has with regards to these bad actors, and it's a combination of consumer protection coverage as well as a private right of action. Representative Towns, you're recognized.
Thank you, your gorgeousness. I appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, not you, certainly not you. This is a bill that concerned me some years ago, as you said, in Memphis, and I'm sure it's not the same case. These were people that were from out of town. They were ladies, come out and their car was booted. And, late at night, you subject yourself to a little bit more risk, okay? And their problem is that the guy wouldn't take cash. And so it created another problem, an additional problem. And I'm thinking that the American Greenback ought to be good anywhere in this country and around the world. And when we decide to let people not take cash for a transaction, we have a problem. Now, that impacts the tourist business because that leaves a bad impression for a group of women or anybody that's from out of town trying to figure out how to get their car and get from point A to point B 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And a lot of them are bad actors, and they need the boot themselves. A lot of them do, okay? Because they're creating a danger for us and our people that are out trying to have a good time, celebrating whatever, bar mitzvahs, birthdays, what have you. So is there a way that this bill will address the fact that they need to also set credit cards but cash as well, so people can take care of the business.
Representative McCollum.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Towns, we actually, last year with the Booting Protection Act, put the provision in place where they had to accept credit cards in addition to cash, to where it wasn't just cash only. You had folks that would only take cash. Cash is legal tender. They should have to accept it. Circling back to what happened in Memphis, and yes, that has happened in Memphis. I'm sure it happened in Nashville. The specific instance I was speaking about was with a trucking company that had a trailer full of school supplies heading to East Tennessee, pulled over to grab a Coke out of a gas station, came back out, truck was booted, says, well, we need you to take this off. I got to get on the road. You're going to interfere with my DOT standard and my reporting hours that I've got. The guy who put the boot on said, well, it's going to be $4,000 cash, give or take. Don't quote me on the exact number, but it was a lot. He says, I don't have that on me. He says, well, I'm going to tow your rig. Company comes back and says, we need to pick up this. We need to get this out. He says, it's going to be just well over $10,000 for us to release this vehicle to you. So it's again, you've got bad actors who are abusing a system and running a racket on this practice, both in towing and in booting vehicles.
Representative Towns.
Mr. Chairman, that's a horrible example. Realistically, it's occurring. So the question in my mind also, since we're delving into this industry, what else do you think we need to do punitively to these bad actors? They need to experience some punishment as well for doing things of that nature. Okay, $10,000, that's real money. $4,000, that's real dough.
Representative McCollum.
So this does allow the AG to bring some enforcement under the Consumer Protection Act. So it does have both criminal and civil action that can be brought against. And my understanding is this particular company in Shelby County is under investigation right now. So it is being dealt with, but we need to, hopefully with the passage of this bill, it fixes the code to where we won't have this happening in the future.
Mr. Chairman, finally, love to sign on to the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, in Amendment 1, there's a portion that talks about the police departments being able to seize motor vehicles that are found abandoned, immobile, unattended.
Sponsor.
And could you talk a little bit about what you're trying to do there? It looks like the police can seize these vehicles in a short amount of time, and once they do, they have to auction them off. Can you talk to that provision?
Mr. Sponsor.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Leader Camper, so the police, nothing in this bill would necessarily prohibits the police from being able to tow a vehicle off of public property. They can do that now. We do in Amendment 01542, I believe, 542.
Yeah.
Let me find it. It can't be towed unless it's been unattended for 12 hours. Additionally, towing companies are now required to immediately release a motor vehicle that a towing operator has begun to tow, but is not yet removed from the parking lot if the owner arrives and pays a vehicle release fee of up to $100. With regards to law enforcement being able to tow, they have that ability to tow a vehicle right now and bring it to impound. This bill does nothing to speak towards. To my knowledge, does nothing to speak towards the auction and lien process that's already in existence today, ma'am.
Later, you got a follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm reading here, if abandoned, immobile, or unattended vehicle is not reclaimed, the police department must sell the vehicle at a public auction, the proceeds of which will pay for the department's fees that were incurred, etc. But it looks like the amendment is adding this extra provision. So I need to, if we could hear from legal on that, because it's saying additionally is permitting the law enforcement to do something. And then it's outlining what they can do and the timeline for which they can do it.
We'll do that for you later. Just give us just a second here to collect our thoughts on that matter. And with that, we're going to go, or you got anything, Mr. Sponsor, or we're just going to go straight,
I'm happy to defer to legal.
straight to legal on this one. We're out of session.
Love Middleton, Office of Legal Services. Leader Camper, I just wanted to make sure I was looking under the new section 55-31-301, which talks about the police department taking into custody these motor vehicles. I believe that language is what is currently in statute. So my understanding is this bill isn't making substantial changes to those provisions.
All righty.
Okay.
You good later? For legal, Representative Hardaway, or after we get back in session?
Legal, sir.
All right, sir. What you got?
This doesn't interfere with the ability for our local governments to implement stricter ordinances, local ordinances.
My understanding is it does not. I believe there's a provision particularly about booting that states specifically that they can impose stricter requirements than in this bill, as long as they meet the requirements that are in this language as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anybody else for our always capable legal counsel? All right, we're back in session. Let me say this, Mr. Sponsor, is that you've put a lot of work in this. Thank you for that. You've had a lot of stakeholders with it, and I don't want this to be seen because I just got to tell you, I wish I owned several parking lots in Nashville. I really do. What a great business to be in.
Same here, sir.
But you've taken the time and care to root out some activities and some behaviors that need to be corrected for the consumer's benefit. And as my friend from Memphis said, we want people to have good impressions of that they've been treated fairly and whenever they come to visit us. So thank you for that. You got any parting words before we see what your colleagues want to do with this?
Just thank you for the consideration, members. Thank you.
All right. Well, yeah, Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Chairman. Question on a comment. The question is, does any of this, to the sponsor, any of this impact signage, the size of the lettering, or the information on the sign?
Sponsor?
Yes, it does. Let me pull it up real quick. So 15993 changes requirement that each parking spot have signage posted at the end of the parking spot and requires posting to be conspicuous with and along with the increased signage size in the next section will ensure that the signage can be visible from each parking spot. So there is signage requirements with regards to color, signage, language, and lettering that goes along with this.
Thank you. And the comment is, that was outrageous what happened in, I'm trying to think if it was a truck stop or just a parking spot. But yeah, that company, the trucking company, ended up having to pay tens of thousands of dollars in order to secure their property. And that's not taking into account the loss of the use of that truck and the business that was coming from the use of that truck. So it was crazy. It's just crazy. So thank you for the bill, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's get this thing on to GovOps if we get a chance. What do you think? Question on the bill. All those in favor of sending 1731 to GovOps as amended, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. There are none. You're off to GovOps, sir.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
House Bill 2711 from Leader Garrett. You've got a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Committee,
House Bill 2711 is legislation that came from our Attorney General's office, and it updates our Tennessee Trade Practices Act in the antitrust world. And just so you all are aware of what that is, Congress in 1890 passed the Sherman Act, which was a federal law that made sure we did not put certain restraints on trade as it relates to price fixing or monopolization and things like that. Since then, each state has created a state action by state statutes that mimics the Sherman Act to make sure the states don't do the same activity when it comes to price fixing or monopolization. And an example of that, I don't know if you all have seen the movie The Informant or not, but that character, that's actually from an actual particular company. Matt Damon was the actor in that movie, and he worked for a company that made a chemical that was in just about everything. There were several different large companies that produced this chemical, and these companies decided to have secret meetings and determine the prices of this chemical. That is a violation of the Sherman Act, which is also now would be a violation of our Anti-Practices Act in Tennessee. So you can't price fix. What this does, this particular piece of legislation was acted in Tennessee shortly after the Sherman Act in 1890. So it's a law's been on the book for a long, long time. That's barely been touched since then. And in fact, one of the major portions of this particular piece of legislation is currently it only applies to goods. So it only applies right now to phones, pens, or whatever else that we can trade in the marketplace that you can physically touch. It does not relate or incorporate services. And as you all know from the digital world now, mostly Google, your apps, everything we operate in the digital world that provides a service. Services right now are excluded. This piece of legislation would include that sector that's basically untouched for services. So if Google, and Google's been subject to a lot of antitrust violations, lawsuits, et cetera, because of their business model, and Google is now a verb instead of a company. So you Google things, we use it as a verb. In this context, if Google was in Tennessee and they are trying to fix their prices or services, et cetera, I'm not suggesting they are, but if that was happening, our state statute would not apply to Google. So that's one of the reasons why this piece of legislation is very important, because our current statute is a little bit archaic. We haven't touched it in over 100 years. It's been touched a little since 1978. So there are several pieces of this legislation that makes this more streamlined, gives the Attorney General the ability to hone in on a discovery request. And for those purposes, if they're in a piece of legislation or a piece of an issue with a price fixer or someone that's monopoly, right now, if they ask the Attorney General for documents and they're housed in the state, that is so broad, they could come to the legislature and ask us for documents that may not even apply to the particular legislation. And the Attorney General has no way to respond to that. And so this narrows the discovery process to the issues that are currently about that particular piece of legislation. So that's an archaic wording in the statute since it hasn't been touched in so long. So there's several provisions that are really updating in nature our antitrust behavior, so we have better enforceability. It's more friendly for our businesses when it comes to frivolous lawsuits, et cetera. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if I'll be happy to take any questions as it relates to this piece of legislation, but otherwise I ask for your support.
Chairman Clemens, you got a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate any efforts to modernize antitrust laws. They are archaic at the federal level, especially, and apparently in Tennessee as well. My curiosity is with regard to what are we doing anything to limit private rights of action, causes of action, and penalties, civil penalties, or limiting the statute of limitations in any way?
Mr. Sponsor.
There's several components to that. And I would say your first question was limiting what, Chairman, could you?
So are we limiting the amount per violation under civil actions?
Sponsor?
No, we're not limiting any rights as it relates to a consumer that has been subject to any type of price fixing, et cetera.
Are we capping damages in any way?
Mr. Sponsor?
I don't believe we're capping any damages in this.
Are we shrinking the statute of limitations in any way?
Mr. Sponsor?
Hang on one second. Let me refer to my.
I know it's going to 3 years in this bill, but what is it currently?
Well,
hold on a second. Chairman Clemens, if you'll give him a minute to answer your first question before you ask the second one, we might get this thing. squared away. Sponsor.
Okay, thank you. In certain instances, there's none, depending upon the harm to the consumer. And so there's some instances where their statute of limitations is reduced to 3 years. But for generally speaking, when we have a violation of the Trade Practices Act, the Attorney General can bring that action because certain circumstances may arise where the discovery rule could apply. We don't know the harm for some time later, so there's not a statute as relates to that, if that makes sense.
Chairman Clemens.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess I'm more focused. I know the AG has a broad scope of discretion here. I'm more curious about the private cause of action, the civil cause of action brought by people. We've limited the Consumer Protection Act in recent years with the catch-all provision, limiting that to the Attorney General. And I'd hate for us to do the same here when we're trying to modernize the antitrust laws of the state of Tennessee for the same purpose. There aren't, these cases, as you well know, and there aren't many frivolous antitrust lawsuits filed. I mean, they're complicated lawsuits. They're very difficult. They're discovery heavy, which are expensive. And so when you say that we're doing something here to protect corporations from frivolous lawsuits, that's kind of sends a red flag in my mind, because I don't hear about or see many frivolous antitrust lawsuits. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Could you respond to that in any way?
Sponsor.
Yes, and thank you for that, thank you for that question. It's not necessarily, and maybe I'm using the word frivolous too strong, but it is a very complicated section of the law. But what happens in many times, the Attorney General can institute what is referred to as a civil investigative demand. So it's not necessarily that it prevents a person from bringing a claim, but this would apply to what actions can be brought by the Attorney General. Now, that wouldn't alleviate a individual if a company is doing something to them for bringing a lawsuit in violation of the Tennessee Consumer Protection Act. So they would not be forever barred from bringing an action. It's just under this particular act, under the price fixing or monopolization, this is for the Attorney General, but they can do things on behalf of Tennessee consumers when they see this violation taking place. So I don't want to make it seem like this is not something that consumers can bring, but under this particular act, it is a lawsuit that's brought by the state of Tennessee, by the Attorney General's office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just do more research on my own as well, and won't take up more of the committee's time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the sponsor. Back to the other gentleman's question. Under the Clayton Act, you could still bring a private cause of action with triple damages. So I think the question about people being foreclosed by something we may pass here is cleared up under that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sponsor.
And thank you for bringing up the Clayton Act. That's also a federal piece of legislation, but our Tennessee Consumer Protection Act also provides for an action where you can bring treble damages and get reasonable attorney's fees, et cetera, if you prevail on the Tennessee Consumer Protection Act.
Thank you. And I've done all I can do, but I've got to try it. Monopolization. I did get it out. I didn't want to have to say that fast. Anyone with any other questions? I don't see any. Let's vote on this bill. Let's vote to send House Bill 2711 on to calendar and rules. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Ayes have it. Let's move on to House Bill 2713 by Representative Garrett. We got a motion and a second. We've also got an amendment.
Are you on number 8 or number 9 on our calendar? 2712 and 2713.
We rolled 2712 to the heel.
You rolled it to the heel. Okay. So we're on 2713.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay, we've had a motion and second on the bill. Let's get the amendment attached. Let's, what number you got there?
I've got drafting code 013721.
That's a match.
There we
All
go.
those in favor of attaching that amendment to Bill 2713, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. You are attached, sir. Please tell us what we're doing here.
Great. 2713 as amended seems every year I bring the trust legislation from the Tennessee Bankers Association. The Tennessee Bankers Association does a great job with this particular area of the law. They have a group that meets every year and just to remind the committee that, over the past 6, 7, 8 years, we've gone from $25 billion invested in trusts here in the state to now well over $270 billion. And part of that, or the majority part of that, is that we continue to hit our legislation to make Tennessee attractive for folks to have their trust assets here. And by the way, some of those people are not even here, even live here or Tennesseans or whatnot, but they place their trust monies here because of the laws that we have in place to not only protect the corpus of the trust, to protect the beneficiaries, et cetera. So this is actually probably one of my least complicated pieces of legislation in the trust world. It does 4 things, mostly to clarify matters. It clarifies when there's a beneficiary that may be a guardian, a conservator, or a family member, that they can represent themselves when they're unable to represent themselves when a question or some sort of dispute arises regarding a trust that they may be involved in. The second, that it clarifies a private trust companies and it changed the trustee is not considered a change in control, which is a usual course of business for these private trust companies. And then also an estate planning tool for folks is if they have a small business or whatnot and they create a family general partnership for tax purposes, those entities are now carved out in this to gain certain tax advantages if they have a family general partnership. And then also, for those of you that are just entrenched in the law and want to learn about the laws, the rule against perpetuities, that is a long legal doctrine that says basically a trust can't be in trust for forever. There is, that's called the rule against perpetuities. And this simply says if a trust comes from another state, we can adopt that state's rule against perpetuities or currently have our own. So those are the 4 things that this piece of legislation does and just really clarifies in our trust legislation. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to take any questions. Otherwise, I would ask for your support.
Are we going to trust Representative Garrett with his bill on trust? That's the question. But yet there is another question from Representative Towns. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As it relates to perpetuity, so is that putting a limit, time limit? And if it is, what would that time limit be? How long can the trust actually
Sponsor.
It is measured by time, life, and being.
That sounds like a Star Trek.
That's
answer.
very overly simplified. And I may not have even said the phrase right, but the rule against perpetuity simply means you can't have something in trust forever. There's actually got to be an end date.
Representative Towns.
So what about your lifetime? So let's say if you died 90 years old, I mean, will it extend till then? Or is it after your death where it's terminated?
Mr. Sponsor.
It's not measured by necessarily your life, but it's also measured by your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and possibly even your great-grandchildren.
Representative Towns.
So what you're saying is that it can't roll over, they can't reactivate the trust itself?
Sponsor.
No, what it's saying is probably 8 generations from the Towns family, you can't keep something in trust for that long.
Representative Towns.
So the question becomes, I mean, you do trust for a certain reason. Okay, that generation, that 8th generation, 9th generation would need the same kind of protection, I would think, that the first that initiated the trust. So why is it that we can't trust them to utilize the trust 9th generation down?
Representative Garrett.
Because hopefully when that 9th generation, the trust terminates, they will go to hopefully a seasoned estate lawyer and provide for what they need for their children for 9 generations from there.
All right, follow up, last one. So that means that still there would be a way for them to secure whatever the assets, the things that they're looking to do as the initial person that started the trust that started the trust actually did. They still will have the ability to protect themselves as well, the 9th generation down.
You know, Representative Towns, I know you care about a lot of folks and you do a great job, but I just got to say, 9 generations from now, I frankly don't care. You know, I've just got to tell you, I know you may, but I don't. But so 8 is fine for me personally, but I don't want to try to project that on you. But I'm just thinking 8 generations, that's a lot. Representative Towns.
Mr. Chairman, 8 is enough sound like a TV show. Look, the second name, Mr. Chairman, I believe in science. Science may have an ability to keep us here 10 generations. So, I just want to know, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got it. Thank you.
All right, Chairman Hazelwood. All right, question on the bill. All those in favor of sending House Bill 2713 to the calendar and rules, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're off to calendar and rules. Looks like we're going to get finished today, folks. Good for us. It all depends on how quickly Representative Freeman can get through this. Motion second. 1832, Representative Freeman, you got an amendment.
I do. I actually have two amendments, drafting code 015224 and 014108.
Representative Freeman, we are only showing the second one, the 08. Did it rewrite?
So 15224 is not, you don't have that?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Do we need to roll this to get that taken care of, or are you good to get run?
I don't care to include it.
Okay, good deal.
Just keep it going.
All right. All those in favor of attaching 14108 to 1832, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, no. You're attached. Tell us what we're doing.
So this is a really simple bill. I had a couple of seniors in my district that had people reach out to them and offer for automatic renewal at a promotional rate. They then forgot about it and were continually billed at a rate that was outside of the promotional rate, sometimes at a 10x increase over what that promotional rate was. So what this bill does is it says anyone that receives a promotional rate for service will have to be notified if it's outside of 60 days of the initial billing of the new billing and the new rate. That's pretty much it. So it's a pretty simple consumer protection bill that I think will help all of our constituents across our state. With that, I ask for everyone's support.
Thanks, sir. We do love transparency around here. Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, let's vote. All right, he's good. Okay. All those in favor of sending 1832 on to calendar and rules as amended?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. You're off to calendar and rules. All right, folks, we concluded our work here today. Oh, wait, Garrett is back to the heel. We're going to adjourn, but we're going to take up next week's calendar. You'll be batting leadoff next week. Chairman Powers, you got an announcement?
Well, I hate to point out any imperfection of our chairman, but we didn't have personal orders today. And I did have a personal order because my lovely wife here of 37 years is out here with us, and I just wanted to recognize her. She's my shadow today.
You know, I saw you a little bit unsettled over there, Chairman Powers, and had I known it was just going to be an opportunity for you to express your love, I would have certainly called on you sooner, sir. I apologize, Ms. Powers. Everybody, let's stand and adjourn.